You can black your screen. You can block your screen.
Nah.
You look fine. I'm exhausted, so it can't be any worse.
And I'm
Well,
a
you can't
whiny.
see, you
Aw.
can't see the circles in your eyes because they're in the shadow anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a cold. We're all good. We're all perfect little
Oh,
divine beings here tonight. Well, welcome to our Thursday for CSL Inner Journey. And I am honored to be your speaker tonight, Reverend Lynne Heygster. And so I shall begin with a quote. Never try to force other people to accept spiritual truth. Instead, see to it that they are so favorably impressed with your own life and conduct and the pace and joy that radiate from you that they will come running to you of their own accord, begging you to give them the wonderful thing that you have. And that's Emmett Fox. So tonight, my topic I'm going to talk about is tithing, giving, offering, love offering, and time, talent, treasure. All those wonderful things. But let's begin with our invocation. Oh. So just join me in relaxing for just a moment. And I recognize that right here in this moment, which is the only moment there is this presence of the divine that is all in everything, within each individual here and everywhere. And it is that which expresses forward actually in every direction, because it is all that is. Everything that I see, touch, feel, and become aware of is the expression and the experience through that infinite and through me, as I am part of that right here in this third dimensional reality. And that is good and very good. As that being the maker of all that is and of myself, I recognize that I have that inborn, natural desire to be abundant and to know that abundance is my birthright and to be an expression of abundance in every area of my life and joining in with every individual and in sharing that abundance. I allow that abundance to flow through me in every direction and for everything, as I know it is within everyone. And that is good and very good. And as that's our topic tonight, I allow that to just expand so that we each feel that within us, just awaken it and remember that it is what we are. And so with that, I just let it be. And so it is.
so it is.
and so it is.
It is.
So I'm going to talk at you for about 20 minutes, and then we're all going to share. So I had lots of fun looking up information. As a minister, I guess, expected to have all these things at the top of my head, but I had fun kind of researching and just remembering information about tithing and offering and learning new things about it. So my hope in this experience tonight is that we'll bring up some information for each person to remember about tithing itself and learn some new things as well. So I know that there are those who have tithed very successfully and so successfully in their lives that their lives have changed forever and abundantly for the good. And there are those who have tithed unsuccessfully, actually, and that their lives have changed in the opposite direction. And they're in more debt than before they started, and they have no idea why. There are those who see everything from the heart and from abundance, and there are those who only know how to see from a place of lack because that's what their life has been. And it is every bit as important to be aware and conscious of what you're moving to as it is to be aware and conscious of what you're moving from. Are you manifesting from a place of lack or a place of abundance and freedom? So let's start with tithing. The standard definition of tithing. A tithe is 0.1% of something paid as a contribution to a religious organization or a compulsory tax to government. Today, tithes are normally voluntary and paid in cash or check, or most recently, we're doing all of our giving online. Whereas historically, tithes were required and paid in kind, such as agricultural produce. And who invented tithing? If that is really a question for that. Well, in Genesis 14, the first instance of tithe in scripture was Abraham. Abraham was visited by a mysterious figure named, I never get this right, Melchizedek, I think it's pronounced, a priest and king of Salem, which was the forerunner of Jerusalem. And Abraham honors Melchizedek by giving him a tithe of everything he had. Here we see the first example of the give 1/10 principle. So why is tithing so powerful? Well, tithing is one way to worship God, to honor him as your provider, and to remind yourself that all of your resources belong to him and are provided through his grace. As you give him the first 10% of your income, you set your course to honor God. In a way, you handle the rest of your finances in your life. So these are fun questions I found as I was Googling. And did Jesus pay tithe in the Bible? Well, Jesus and his disciples never paid tithes, and neither did they instruct anyone to do so. Paul wrote 3/4 of the New Testament and had many opportunities to talk about tithe, but he never did. He spoke a lot on giving, and as a matter of fact, giving is mentioned 176 times in the New Testament, but nothing on tithing.
Wow.
So I had lots of fun with these topics and finding these questions and these answers, but I also found enough information to confuse me because it seems like depending on where you found your information, you could also find a story just different enough to make you wonder what the author was expressing things just the way they wanted you to think and believe about it.
Of course.
Of course, that's right. So our website with Reverend Sue Ellen and inner-journey.org describes donation and tithing in this way. Excuse me. Tithing or giving 10% of our income is a spiritual law that blesses the giver when it is done in a spirit of gratitude for the blessings already received. Inner Journey Center for Spiritual Living teaching chapter is a tithing community. We understand that our giving a full 10% of our income received by any means, recognizes God as the only source and substance of our supply. By giving generously and consistently, we guarantee that our supply, the return promised by spiritual law, will also be generous and consistent. We highly recommend that if you do not, whoops, that's my cat. We highly recommend that if you do not already tithe 10% to the source of your spiritual food, that you consider doing so. Pray about it. Seek inner guidance. It can change your life in ways you can't imagine. We know because we have experienced it. And she has 2 quotes. Give love, joy, and a sense of fun, and the windows of heaven will be thrown open with a blast. That's from the Abundance book by John Randolph Price. I will open the windows of heaven for you. I will pour out a blessing so great you won't have enough room to take it in. And that's in Malachi in the Bible. Now here's a little different version, kind of similar, but a little different. This is from Heygster CSL in California. And this is what they have written on their website. And here we start to look at some of the different terminology. So the title of the page is Tithing, but then they have a subtitle, Time, Talent, Treasure. The spiritual practice of conscious giving is an invitation to deepen our connection with Spirit and know that its infinite good is already within us. To give with an open, joyful, loving heart and grow by stretching our consciousness in the arena of giving. In the words of Ernest Holmes, there is an infinite law of spirit or law of life which tends to multiply our gifts because in so doing it multiplies its own experience, its own pleasure, its own fruition. This quote reminds us that in giving, we are avenues of divine distribution, and Spirit experiences the fruits of its givingness through us. How wonderful is that? Summit Spiritual Center, which is a part of the AHA Center, offers many ways for each of us to explore conscious giving. One way of giving is to give your time. We hope you find an area of service that opens your heart as you share your gift of self with others. We may expand our understanding of prosperity to take us beyond money alone and truly reflect the abundant nature of life itself and our right to live abundant lives by exploring the truth about money and what it stands for in our lives. We have the opportunity to gain freedom from money having power over us through challenging ourselves to give from the heart with love. Traditionally, tithing is giving 10% of your gross earnings to your spiritual source. If 10% inspires you, then go for it. However, any amount that stretches you and makes you examine and move through your beliefs around lack and limitation is the percentage with which we encourage you to begin your tithing experience. If that is 5%, 8%, or 20%, it's yours to take into prayer to know the right amount for you. Be sure to consider not only where you're giving to, but where you are giving from. One thing that is absolutely necessary, whatever the amount, it must be given with love. If a tithe is given with underlying motives of trying to get more, then you will not experience the gifts and freedom of this amazing practice. From Eric Butterworth, prosperity is a way of living and thinking and not just money or things. Poverty is a way of living and thinking, not just a lack of money and things. So I found that interesting. One more paragraph. We teach that tithing is not a practice we should do out of a sense of obligation, but something we choose to do out of a generous spirit of love and giving. We promote the message that your tithe is to be given freely and joyously to whatever feeds you spiritually. Most abundantly, tithing is a demonstration of faith that God is our source of abundance. So I wanted to bring those out because each Center for Spiritual Living has a page, or most of them do. They have a page that talks about tithing and giving because it is part of our way of, in New Thought, being that open vessel. And it's not forced, it's not an obligation. It is part of understanding our flow in the universe. I like to think of money is divine love in action. So we just keep it flowing. It is God in action. It's how we use our energy in this third dimensional world. We give without attachment. We pay our bills with gratitude, and we give to ourselves and savings with joy. We give to flow out, and we keep it moving so it also flows in. Flows out in one direction, then flows back in, like the flow of the water in a stream or a river. Once we begin that flow, it's continuous. And it comes from a consciousness of that flow. Also, we're made from divine spirit. That is everything. Jesus is the great teacher and example of what we are capable of. We have the kingdom of all good within us. And actually, we are the kingdom of good. We are capable of creating an abundant life. It is our birthright. And that right there is the difficult hurdle for many because there's so many people are raised in a consciousness of lack and of fear and of ego and shame. It's those energies that make us feel worthless. And unfortunately, organized religion system kind of perpetuates some of that. It doesn't help it. However, we have the ability to change that for ourselves. I did find that not all churches actually require tithing. I was surprised to learn that Southern Baptists do not observe tithe. Who knew? Only offering, which is, I'll ask a question about that later, but something a little different. For many activities and workshops, the term we use is love offering. Give us a love offering or a donation. So you leave it up to the person that they feel the value of what they received. So does that term used change the action of the giving or the flow? From Wayne Dyer, he says, when I chased after money, I never had enough. When I got my life on purpose and focused on giving of myself and everything that arrived into my life, then I was prosperous. From Mark Hansen, The Miracle of Tithing, tithing is to open ourselves to awareness of spiritual truth and the universal law, helps you to know yourself, and turns on the spigot of all good. I have a little pile of books. I have just a few books to show you.
You're funny.
Well, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I had to do that. So I went through my bookshelf and I was so surprised really at the number of books I had about prosperity. But I bet I'm not alone. I bet you guys got a bunch of them too.
Yep.
You know, when you
I
start
know,
collecting
I
them,
know.
then
Yeah.
you don't lose. Okay, so where did his little book go? Let's see, Mark Hansen. All right, because there's two I want to show you. So Mark Hansen, this is his little book. And this is the other little tiny book I have, The Money Bible by Stuart Wilde. So in Mark Hansen's book, he goes through a list of universal laws that he really likes, that he feels that really show how tithing can change your life for the better and release you from the addiction of money, is what he calls it.
What's the title of the book?
It is called The Miracle of Tithing.
Miracle of Tithing. Okay.
Yes, and I'm gonna actually I have the whole book list printed, and I'll put that I'll give that to you guys. But here are the laws, and these are some I've
Thank-
never. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, okay. So these are some universal laws he calls them, but I have not heard of these, or some of them anyway. So the law of energy becoming reality, the law of vibration attraction, law of relativity, you know, I've heard of those. Law of polarity, the law of rhythm, the law of gestation, and of course, the law of cause and effect. And he talks about those in his book as those are the laws that we can focus on to make changes about our consciousness of abundance. Now, this little guy, anything by Stuart Wilde is fun. And I know Sue Ellen reads some of his stuff. He's passed away at this point, but his books are really good. So he has, this whole book is about the 10 laws of abundance. And his laws of abundance are the law of abundance is natural and God-given, the law of flow, the law of money and distance, the spiritual law of supply and demand, the law of money, concentration, and the wave particle duality. That's my fun stuff. The law of invocation and manifestation, the law of money and ego, the law of giving and receiving, the law of honor, integrity, and abundance, the law of love, compassion, and money. So I find it interesting that I did find, you know, these little books, certainly didn't get them at the same time, but how interesting they are that universal laws are the things that we use, or that these two authors focus on as how to work with the consciousness of money. Now, there's some other laws that are connected to abundance, money flow, and that are taught in science of mind classes that I remember. In practitioner training, the law of reciprocity, exchange, giving and receiving, law of correspondence, as above, so below, and of course, the law of attraction, and then the law of inspired action. Thought that was a good one. Law of perpetual transmutation of energy. I found that one online. I've never even heard of that one. Situations may bring us into a low vibration, but it's up to us to bring ourselves back to a higher vibration. That's the law of perpetual transmutation in energy. Law of compensation. Trust that the universe wants you sorry. Law of compensation. Trust the universe wants to reward you, and are you open to receive? Now, Science of Mind teaches a number of classes, and they have over the years, for raising our abundant consciousness. There's always something in Foundations, which is all about changing our consciousness. Spiritual Economics, excellent class, excellent book. 5 Gifts of Abundant Life. Prosperity Plus with Marianne Morrissey, 1, 2, and 3. I found her talks and her tapes and her information interesting. I actually enjoyed those classes. And my favorite was Principles of Financial Freedom, which is no longer taught, but if you ever hear anybody teaching that class again, it might be interesting to check into it. So all that I've shared so far is really important. And Sue Ellen and I talked about this topic and about using it tonight for me because it seems like tithing hasn't been discussed very much in churches in the Sunday talks, and don't hear much about fundraising like churches used to do, which was a very particular thing every year. And what's also interesting is that not only in Science of Mind churches, and a lot of them, but in a lot of organized churches, they're writing articles that people are coming to church, but they're not putting as much in the baskets. So that idea of really focusing on our abundant consciousness is not being worked with like as much as maybe it could, or I don't know if should is the right word. But when we get scared, we tend to withdraw and hold things in. So there is truth that the economy is changing. Interest rates are up. Inflation is causing some grocery bills to jump up. Seniors are trying to decide, do I fill my prescription or pay my electric bill? And when you look at life from kind of that perspective, it's hard not to fall back into a place of lack. So can we change our perspective and change our flow of economics? Yes, I say yes. And I have my stories of change and after I found Science of Mind. And when I get finished my blah blah here, I'd love to hear what your stories are with prosperity. So, why would we tithe? What does the action of tithing do? Why do we teach tithing or giving from the heart without attachment? And in your heart of hearts, do you ever doubt or have questions about tithing or giving or the results of it? And how would you explain tithing to someone new to the topic? Or the interesting question is, what's your elevator speech? If you were on an elevator and you had 4 floors to go and somebody said, what's tithing? What would your elevator speech be? So, okay, so let's open for discussion for a little bit. Oh, we lost Kevin.
Okay.
Okay.
I never thought about an elevator speech of somebody asking what's tithing to someone in an elevator is just absolutely bizarre.
I know. I know that
That's a really good question. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really good question. Can
Yeah.
you guys hear me or
Yes.
oh, okay.
Your sound is perfect. Your picture's a
Okay.
little fuzz and delayed, but your sound is perfect.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
You want to talk first, Reverend Sue Ellen? Or you want me to go?
It doesn't matter. You want me to talk
What-
first? I don't know what I'm
You
talking
spoke
about.
up. And
I just,
Well, I can ask these
you
questions
spoke
again.
up.
I'm sorry.
it was just the question about the elevator speech.
Oh.
I mean, it was like, what?
Well, let me say this. Do you have a story, a prosperity story? And then the other questions were, why do we tithe? What does the action of tithing do? Why do we teach tithing or giving from the heart without attachment? And in your heart of hearts, do you doubt or have your own questions about tithing and giving and receiving?
The answers to those are all related to me. When I first started at United Life, and they talked about tithing the first time they did that from, I don't remember where in my process, I'd been there not long. And they talked about it and somebody said, well, you don't have to tithe 10%. You can just tithe 5 if that's okay. And I'm thinking to myself, why would I not want to tithe 10? If the whole process is about believing that source is my source, then I believe the abundance of giving back is the part that is for me to express. And there's no reason for me not to do 10% at that time. And so I started with 10% net, though it's supposed to 10% gross, because that worked for me at the time.
Yeah.
it's easier to figure. I wasn't even paying attention to what my gross was. So, and I just now have done 10% gross probably for the last 10 years. And, it's like, okay. And then I throw things extra in because the 10% comes in off of what I make. That automatically ties. And then then I'll dump another $15 or $20 in because it's somebody on Thrive or somebody at United Life does something or whatever. I'll throw an extra curve in. So I don't know. I don't have a clue what I actually donate. I just donate from the tithe part comes out of what I get paid checks, and the
Right.
rest is from my heart whenever it feels appropriate. So that has worked for me. I have seen my life turn, from a place of not knowing where money is coming from to a place of feeling confident that it will come. I may not know where it's coming from, but I feel confident that it will be here when I need it.
Yeah. Very cool.
So my perspective on tithing, to answer your question, why tithe? It is truly a gesture from the heart, and it's giving. Yeah, it's an element of just giving. I'm the type of person where specific direction and expectations on me, I tend to rebel, I have to admit. So I like an openness of giving from my heart and giving from my heart to multiple church communities, not just one, right? And I like giving from my heart monetarily, as well as my time, my talent. I like that. And to me, I feel that giving is the focus, right? Not this direction of 10%. I'll admit I've never done 10% on gross. It's been, on net, but not on gross. So to me, tithing, why tithe? It's an element of caring, and giving, and for others, for your community, for individuals, for your and your community can be not just your church community, it can be your city community. It's all of that. And that has always been my broader perspective about tithing. I don't doubt the benefits because, it's from your heart. When I learned science of mind and the law of circulation, sometimes I felt some people would use that law as justification to encourage people to tithe. That always, I'll admit, that bothered me. There are benefits. I mean, I see it. Like Reverend Sue Ellen, I ultimately in life, it's odd. Money would always appear whenever I needed it. I mean, even when I was counting pennies to buy bread, money would always appear when I needed it. Having said that, I'm not a billionaire, but I have what I need. And I don't doubt the benefits of giving. A giving, heartfelt spirit and approaching life that way is very beneficial in many, many ways. So my elevator speech on tithing, I would say tithing is giving from your heart. And it's giving, and tithing is money, it's time, it's your talent. That would be my elevator speech. And then if there were more time, I would say traditionally you find that most churches and institutions link tithing to money.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I would say that, but I would make it that broader perspective. That's quite frankly always been my perspective. Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah. So, Kevin, I don't know if you heard the questions, just to kind of get the conversation going.
I didn't. I got disconnected.
So, where's my questions? Why do we tithe? What does the action of tithing do? Why do we teach tithing or giving from the heart without attachment? And if you're in your heart of hearts, do you doubt or have questions about tithing or giving and the results of it? And how would you might explain it to someone else?
Oh, well, this, I mean, this is such a broad, can you all hear me?
Yes, very well.
I'm on my phone now. My computer went, for no apparent reason. I mean, this is such a broad thing, and it's something that financial freedom has been something that I worked on from the very beginning. Because when I started with Science of Mind in California with RSI, I was struggling. And looking back on my life prior to that, I can relate to what Diane was saying as far as, and I missed what Sue Ellen was saying. I can imagine. But, stuff always showed up for me. I've always flown by the seat of my pants, so to speak, in life, as far as financially goes. Never really had a plan, but I had a plan.
Mhm.
When I lived in New York City, I had friends and we lived a great life. We were poor as church mice, but we always had food and we would get together and we'd have these amazing meals and we all just kind of pitched in. It was like that community gathering of sorts. And it was usually just a couple of us at a time, but we would eat well and we would laugh about it. Because we're like, oh my God, we don't know where we're going to get our rent money, but we're eating well. And, I jumped into things without having any real knowledge of where finances were going to come into necessarily, like my restaurant and opening a restaurant. And things just showed up. And usually, when I wasn't as worrying about it or struggling with it, is when they did show up, and they showed up easier then. I went into debt. I had huge amounts of credit card debt when I left New York City because I was using credit cards to run my business and to live on, and nothing extravagant. I wasn't wasteful. Lord knows I'm very frugal. But I always had a plan as I was using those credit cards of a 10-year plan of how I was going to pay it off. And I always defaulted to that. I was like, nope, I've got a plan. I'm good. I know what's going to happen. I know this. I know how this is going to go. And when I got to California after New York, I had all this debt. I still managed to somehow, with my job at Home Depot, convince the mortgage companies to give me a mortgage so I could buy a house. It was like unbelievable. And fast forward 10 years later, almost to the time of my father's passing in 1999, when he passed, his gift to me was wiping out the last of the one credit card that I had left that was both of our names were on it and he was in first position. And his passing wiped that card out.
Wow.
And that was the only inheritance I really got from him. And I took it and I was like, okay. And from that time on, though, and even before, because at that point I was studying religious science. I was at least a couple years into it when Dad died, and I was embracing the idea of make a plan of what you're going to do with your money, set the amounts of how this is going to go, and then forget about it. Long story there, sorry, but the whole bottom line of this is I did that. I set my tithing amount years ago, hasn't changed. I set it with all good intention, and it doesn't feel like it's a chore or a challenge to me, and it really has the amount, the monthly amount never changed. I did miss it a couple of times, but it's always been the same amount, and I don't think it needed to be changed or different. It was always, it was just, for me, it was, that was the amount, that was what it was, and it just consistently did that, and then I just let it go. My bills are all the same way. And then all of a sudden now, fast forward 10 years, 15 years, whatever it's been, I never consider how much I have in the bank when I'm paying my bills. It's like the abundance has come and surfaced, and you know, all the credit cards are paid. If I have one, it's because I'm using it for a discount deal or whatever. Um, you know, all the cards I have actually really low interest rates by comparison to what most cards are these days. I can go out and buy a vehicle if I want one tomorrow. I have the money to go and buy something. You know, we bought a house this last August and paid cash for it. You know, it's I don't have a mortgage, and that all was prior to Brian. I managed to create some abundance to where I could capitalize on it and have multiple real estate properties and not have a mortgage on any of them. And that took some time. You know, the last of that ended with the last house in, oh my God, I guess the last house I had a mortgage on was the one in, well, I had one in Boise and one in Oklahoma. But the point is it's grown and manifested as it just gets bigger and bigger. It's like a snowball rolling down.
Yep.
And you just keep, it just keeps gathering and gets larger and larger and larger. And to the degree that you want to play in the snow and all that, you know, there's things I could have done that would have made it even larger as far as the abundance goes. If I would have played bigger, or if I would have not had that element of slight doubt or fear and let go of something a little too soon and took the quick way out with things I've had in the past, houses that I sold a little bit too soon, kind of thing. But the tithing is part of that. You know, it's once I set my intention of getting my bills paid 30 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it was. And then I also fell into the pattern of tithing, and I set my amount, and it just was like clockwork. You know, I would tithe when I wouldn't even have money going into a savings account for myself.
Yeah.
Because that's what it was. I wasn't worried about it. And as far as how I feel about it, depends on what day it is and what I'm looking at. You know, when I see churches not doing good for their communities and their religious leaders are making tons of cash and they're not serving back to the community, it makes me nuts.
Oh yeah.
And then why are people giving their money to these charlatans? Because that's what it seems like. In our own community, I see our former ministers that are traveling the world, and I have that twinge of, wow, they made a lot of money off their congregations for the years they were ministers. But then I remind myself that, yeah, but they also took the money they were making and they made right choices, and they probably had made smart moves and bought things that yielded more income, and, you know, like I did. So then I let it go. And it's not my problem, it's not my business. and they're not directly asking me for money. So
Yeah.
if they were, then I would have more of probably a bone to pick with it. So it's really it's a catch 22. I prefer love offering as opposed to a tithe. For my services as a practitioner, when I was being paid, when I lived in Idaho, I had a client that just stone broke as a rock. And that was what one of her issues were that she was working with me on. And I said, okay, well, we did a couple of free sessions, and I was like, so this next one, you're going to have to pay me something. That's just the way it is. And she ended up bringing me a couple of jars of preserves that she'd made. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I was like, but you've got to understand that, this is helping you to get to the point of enabling your own abundance and getting out of this rut that you're in your mindset of lack. Because if you keep getting stuff from me for free, then you're not paying for it and you're not understanding the principles of how this works. Because paying for it is where the value comes in, so to speak. And after about 6 months of working with me, she did gradually wean off, and we did not work together anymore. But when she did that, she was at a place where she was actually solvent, and she was doing very well.
Excellent.
It was about 4 or 5 sessions in, I guess, where she actually started paying me money. And it was for my services. And at first it was a smaller amount, and then it gradually moved up to the amount that I had preliminarily set as my hourly rate. So
Cool.
But she understood the value was there when you get to assign the value. And the bottom line is money's a tool. It's not the root of all evil, because it's nothing more than a tool. And what we do with it is completely up to us.
That's right. Absolutely.
We have to own the money, and what we do with it and the power of the money is ours to own, not let it own us.
Yep. Excellent.
I think I'm done.
Good stories.
Very
I'm one of those ones, when I first came to Science of Mind, that I was raised in a consciousness of lack. We had no money when I was growing up. So I was, and no talk about how to make things any better. Church for me, there was never a discussion about a consciousness in church. You just, mom gave us a quarter to put in the basket in the kids' room, and then or a dime, and there was never any talk about what that money was for or what it did. When I was an adult at the Methodist Church, they would come around to your house once a year with the pony. It was a Pony Express with a pony saddlebag thing, and a checklist on a register that you had to give an extra donation, and they would check your name off the list, and you'd put cash in the thing. That was the Methodist Church where I lived in Maryland, like whatever. So when I came to Science of Mind, I came with that consciousness of nothing, really. First class I took was financial freedom. And it taught me that, we are abundant. We are these abundant creatures, and tithing is good, and tithing will change your life. So I started tithing and living as if, and increased my debt, a lot. And I thought, well, I didn't do that right. So to start over again. So I talked with one of my ministers, and I said, so I'm not getting this. I'm more in debt now than when I started, a year ago, on this process of understanding tithing. And she's like, oh, no, then you missed something, because here's what we do. You don't give, if you want to give 10% right off the bat, you can, but here's the thing, you've got to understand where you are consciously, and that's where you work from. So then I was able to start over, and she guided me through understanding that place of where I'm coming from. And then everything turned around. And I had miracles happen that I got a check in the mail one day for an exact amount of something I needed for my home. And I could not believe that this check showed up and where it came from and what it was about. And I was so startled, I dropped to my knees. It was like, okay, I surrender, because it was just incredible. And I've had a couple of those. So for me, the process works. And my husband didn't live giving tithes because he didn't believe in church really, but he had a way with money that was good, and he taught me how to handle money and keep track of things, so that I was able to kind of combine my consciousness with that and then move forward. So, it's an important thing in our lives, and we do it. And there's a physical operational component as well as a spiritual component. When we're tithing to the source of our spiritual support and our spiritual food, it depends on kind of what that is. I mean, it can be someone like a practitioner, but even when we are tithing or just giving a love offering to our church, we're helping keep the doors open. And that in itself is important, because some churches are paid from a corporation, and those churches work differently. But when we're paid, we keep our doors open through our community. And so our offering is twofold. It helps us, it helps them. And once I developed that consciousness of flow and what that is, that's what I want to give energetically to people too. So, okay, so we've had our stories. So I do have this list of books, and I'll send that to each of you. I'll put it on the email that I send out with the recording, but I'll show you what these are. And I bet, and everybody has their pile of books. This is one of the first ones I ever read, Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. I never really figured out what I love. My resume looks like a phone book, so, but I have money to use. Louise Hay's Mirror Work is good because you got to fix yourself, right? Dynamic Laws of Prosperity. She writes a lot. All of her books are big. I have to admit, I haven't read much of that one. This book by Edwin Gaines. This is the 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. This book, it's when I was in Tucson, and I got in touch with her and asked her to come to the church down at Tucson, spend a weekend with us and do a workshop and stuff. And so she was an interesting character. She's so down to earth. This book scared the crap out of me, because this book made things happen that happened so fast that it scared me. So that's a good one.
I think she's still alive.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Marianne Williamson, the Law of Divine Compensation. The Money Keys, Karen Russo is one of our own Science of Mind ministers. 7 Laws of Spiritual Success from one of our classes, but that's good. That's got money thing in it too. The Trance of Scarcity. I met this author also in a workshop. This is very good, because this really talks about, where are we coming from? And so many people are in a trance and don't realize that what they think and how they handle money is, they're kind of asleep with it. They don't realize they're in scarcity. Wisdom of Money. Alice Bandy was a wonderful minister. Very amazing.
I went out to a workshop she had in California from Oklahoma, and I was like the furthest person away that went out there to attend a workshop with her.
Oh, she's just lovely. Lovely.
It was wonderful.
Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. This is one of the ones that Marion Morrissey uses. That's good. And What You Focus on Expands. And she doesn't talk about money particularly. However, what you focus on expands. Are you focusing on scarcity, on lack, or abundance? Right? And I have to tell you, the very first book I ever read about anything that was self-help was by Melody Beattie. Let me see, what was that called again? I had my list here. Codependent No More by Melody Beattie was the very first self-help book I ever read. And that started opening up things for me, because without being open, You know, I had to, a lot of things didn't move. So do you guys have a favorite book that you is kind of like your little money Bible book that works for you or that helped you get going?
I like Thank and Grow Rich by Pam Grout.
Oh, yes. Yes. Very good. Thank you for bringing that up.
I don't necessarily have a favorite book, but the one thing that you were talking about, which also made me realize to bring it up, was the whole money and tithing thing also goes and lockstep for me was becoming a master manifester. You can't manifest if you're in a place of lack.
Right.
And what you were saying about your check coming in that day, that was exactly the right amount that you needed.
Yeah.
That was manifesting.
Yeah.
And I honed that, and that's something that I ride on. I just did it today again. And it's just stuff. You know, I need something, and like I get on Facebook Marketplace and the first thing that pops up is exactly what I'm looking for. And it wasn't there yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's but that abundance is also what leads to the manifesting ability that we have
Mm-hmm.
and cultivate.
Yeah.
I think a piece of that is also your belief that you are a master manifester.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, because we have a whole lot of people who believe that they are not able to manifest, so they're in lack, but they are in fact perfect manifestors. They're just manifesting lack.
Right. Right. Yep.
Exactly.
Just
Yeah. Even when you think it doesn't work, it does work because it's bringing up what you don't think.
Well,
Yep.
and the thing is when you believe something so accurately and fluidly, it and you share that with others around you, then they lend you their power also to make it grow. So
right.
Yeah.
because I mean my most favorite thing is when we were at the Orlando conference one year, and the conferences were great because Sue and I usually shared a room and we shared space and everything. Before that, I was in a space of not enoughness, and I would rent a hotel room that was cheap and find my way to the hotel for the conferences. Or we would go out to eat at a nice place only like once during the course of the whole time, and the rest of the time I was eating cheap chips and garbage food at the hotel because I didn't think I could afford to eat well. But in Orlando, I was running around the whole time and I was handing out, it was Valentine's and all that, and I was handing out candy hearts and all that to everybody. I mean, everybody knew who I was, and I was like, I'm gonna win that. They had an iPad mini for a drawing. And on the morning that we were leaving, not only did I end up winning it, but I won like 3 other door prizes before I won the big prize because they
Oh my
kept throwing my
gosh.
name back in the box. And
So
they kept
cool.
drawing my name, and it was just like it was like this huge amount of abundance. And I kept giving the door prizes that I was winning away to other people around me. And then that last drawing came up and it was my name, and I have the from the video that they had, I still have it somewhere in my files. But you just hear this wave of just this roar because everybody knew I was gonna win. And so when they pulled it out of the thing, it was just like this roar, the whole audience.
Oh, that's amazing. That's wonderful.
But when you share that energy with other people, then they lend you their power in believing it. It's kind of like how Jesus said, you know, just to touch my cloak will heal you. Touching his cloak didn't heal the person that touched it. Her belief in that is what made her heal.
Right.
Right.
And it goes back all the way into the principles, and you can find it in all the stories and all the religious stories. But it truly is, it's your belief and where you set your mind and your intention
Right.
and attention.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And Stuart Wilde in his
It's
little
your
book. Huh? I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say it's your belief and knowing of that. And having, giving is a very loving thing. Addressing life from your heart is a very loving thing. And that brings that energy, like you said, Kevin, and Reverend Sue, all of you are saying that. And that just elevates all.
Mhm.
And it's that, and it circulates that way, right? Instead of bringing lack, fear, anger, and bringing everybody down, you bring that, you elevate with the knowing and the believing and of the giving and the love.
Yes.
That to me is the broader benefit of tithing, which is just a piece of it. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful discussions. Okay, great. Any last comments? We are at our hour. Okay, well,
Boy, that went fast.
yeah, in lieu of our conversation of offering and giving, if you were so inclined to give to Center for Spiritual Living, our innerjourney.org, you can tithe to this number. The number is 405-337-9739. And the word for tonight is peace. You would just put the word peace in and your offering, or you can go to the website, which is inner-journey.org. So, and this does help us to keep things moving and going, and we appreciate that very much with love and gratitude. So I wish everyone a wonderful evening and an abundant couple of weeks until we see you again. And I know that abundance is flowing and flowing and flowing in all directions.
Lovely. Thank you. And
Thank
so
you.
it is.